So thanks very much for joining me this morning, Linda. Oh, this afternoon even. There you go. Great start. Just as we said that. Just as we said that. It's gone. Restart. Welcome. Thanks for joining me this afternoon on your Friday on the new podcast, The Honest Conversation. You are my first guest, and I couldn't be more excited personally. We've had multiple conversations over the years. For my sins, I placed you into an organisation.
You did.
And we've kept track since, and I think we're officially friends on Facebook. But
we are. Yeah.
All good fun. All good fun. So, look, obviously, the Honest Conversation. The aim of the podcast is just to be as honest and transparent around your successes as we can be.
Yeah.
But also the sacrifices you've had to make during that success you've had. You're a woman in tech sales. You're a high achiever. I'm sure we're going to talk about some things today that will have affected you, and that will maybe affect you moving forward as well.
Yeah.
And it's really just to give an insight into what I would class as an A player. The both sides of the fence as such, the good and the bad.
Yeah.
So my guests don't know you. I love saying that, even though I don't even know if anyone's actually listening. So who knows? But look, I just would like to start. Let's just give themselves a 2-minute or a little elevator pitch about you, your background, who you are, and then we'll ask you quick fire round questions, so the listeners can get a bit more into you. So feel free.
Okay, so my name is Linda Wales, although, fun fact, my actual official name is Linda Good, because I married 5 years ago and took my husband's surname. However, I've spent 25 years working with public sector, and I didn't want people to go, who's Linda Good? So I decided to work and continue to work from my maiden name of Wales. So everybody knows me in tech and in public sector, because that's who I work with, as Linda Wales. So I was born and bred in Wakefield in West Yorkshire, but now live in Leeds, so didn't move very far, but hoping to retire to the Lake District in a few years' time. So that's the plan. I have worked in the tech industry now probably for about 25 years. Started out in software, then went to the dark side of hardware, and then back over into software, which is the better place to be. Majority of that time I've worked with public sector, from local authorities to police to fire service. I did 18 months in healthcare, which was probably the hardest sector to work in, and then the majority of the time I've worked with central government, which I really enjoy because it's interesting, and they're all very different. So yeah, when I'm not working, I love exercise, I love being outdoors, love being in the hills, love climbing those mountains, Luke, that you've just climbed, Snowdon. And yeah,
I'm sure you're much healthier than me.
Oh, I try, but I'm 50 now, Luke, and the body hates me, so it keeps breaking on me.
You don't look a day over 30.
Thank you, Luke. That's why more people should do these podcasts. The compliments.
I love that, pushing that. I'll take that. Sign up. All right, fine. So look, one thing we're trying to do is just to ask sort of 7 questions to get a bit to know, and we'll delve into what you've just said to us. So I know Wakefield and Leeds very well, having moved up this way the last couple of years. So yeah. But what did you? I'm sure you didn't want to be at school when they said, Linda, what do you want to be when you're older? You turned around and went, I want to be in sales. What did you want to be when you was a kid?
So I grew up in music. So I started to learn the violin, I think, when I was about 7. And then quickly on the back of that started playing the piano, and I sung it in the school choirs, and I was very musical. I remember at middle school passing my whatever the test was at middle school, and I got 97% out of 100, and I was thrilled because I was like distinction, because music was my thing. So I think in the early days I envisaged having some kind of music career, but back then, all those years ago, we didn't really know there were so many different avenues that you could get into. So for me, and my parents actually, they thought that I would go into becoming a teacher, like a music teacher, but I didn't want to be a teacher. But I wasn't good enough to be a singer. So it was like, well, what do I do in music? So in an ideal world, I would have loved to have been a pop star. But what
I
I
can see
did,
it now, selling
yeah,
out Glastonbury.
right, Ariana Grande, eat your heart out. So I kind of wanted to do music, but I didn't know what. And then I remember thinking one day, whatever I do, I just don't want it to be 9 to 5. I don't want to be normal. And I actually started out working in retail, so that kind of just got into that because I couldn't think of what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to be a lawyer, but I didn't want to spend 7 years in university because I'm not that person that can sit at a desk and listen to that stuff.
Promise
So
not to
yeah.
keep you at your desk too long for
No.
this conversation. I appreciate you doing that. That's amazing. So you wanted to go into music, you wanted to be a
Yeah.
pop star. So, that could have been a very different career choice. We could be listening to you on
Right.
my, on my Spotify yearly. You could be the number one
100%.
person I'm listening to. But
Or I could be writing music. I used to love writing music. So you could be
yeah,
listening to a song that I'd written for Madonna
who knows?
or whoever.
Wow, who knows? Who knows? There's still time. There's
There's
still
still
time.
something,
You could,
yeah.
you could definitely in your lakes, the Lake District. You
Yeah.
can consider for anyone that's listening in the US, the Lake District is just a beautiful part of the
Yes.
UK.
Stunning.
It's very much our very own. I think I don't know. There's a few nice places in the US. I don't want to offend anybody by saying anything, but
Big
you know,
mountains,
big mountains, pools of
lakes.
water, and yeah, very picturesque.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Yeah.
So when you went into, I guess this wasn't actually on a question on
Cool.
the I know wasn't on there, but it's just a follow on. You
Yeah.
started in retail.
Yeah.
A lot of salespeople started in retail, call centers, recruitment, even, but also just doing bar work.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. What was your journey from retail into your first sort of like tech sales role as such? What was that journey look like?
So I remember working in retail. I worked for Next, who were very, very fashionable and not trendy at the time. And then I got made redundant from there and got because they were going on the decline. And then I went to work for Argos for a few years. And I just remembered it was around the time that the World Wide Web came around. And people were sort of coming off discs and starting to use the internet. And I remember thinking, I don't really understand technology, but it's sort of come and it's fast and it's here. And we were going from floppy disks to CDs and CDs to internet, and there was this transition. And I just remember thinking that this could be the start of something huge, and that I wanted to be a part of it. So I decided to sort of look into it, and I was lucky because there was a quite a small company, but a really lovely company over in Northern Ireland that were looking for somebody that they could sort of mold and train and whatever.
Okay.
So I joined them, and I guess I had the right personality. Very obviously introvert. Very extrovert who could take that role on and learn and yeah, so it was a bit of foresight really, just watching. I'm very observational, and I'm always watching and listening, and I think I just picked up at the time that this digital technical stuff was the way to go.
Love that. Yeah, no, I think that's what a lot of people either have or are when they transition into this. We're
Yeah.
talking to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you could sort of look at your life, could you give me sort of 2 or 3 influential people in your life, and hang on, not the ocean, not specifically, what impact have they had in your life?
So, oh God, I was thinking of this. This is a tough one. So, well, the first one's not tough. So, influential in different ways. So, for me, the first person has to be my dad, because my dad died when I was 19. He was 42. So even though he hasn't been here for 31 years of my life, he's influenced me all of that time, because I always wanted to make him proud. If he's watching down on me, I wanted to make him proud. And I remember getting my first company car and thinking, look at this dad, because dad liked cars. And I remember flying over to the company in Northern Ireland that I just mentioned, and sort of looking upwards and saying, you know, Dad, look at me, I'm flying to work. And it was just, you know, I constantly wanted to do good things and be ambitious and be something, because I wanted him to be proud of me, even though he wasn't here to say it. So that would probably be the first person. Not to be too cheesy, the second person is going to be my mum, because she was the same age as Dad when he died, and she had to go through all of that, not really knowing at the time what you were supposed to do. And I don't think you ever know what you're supposed to do, but it just seemed a lot more sheltered back then, you know, even to the point where my mum couldn't even claim widow's pension, because back in the day, widows, you couldn't be classed as a widow until you were past a certain age, which is crackers. A widow's a widow, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So just things like that. She had to struggle financially. She had to struggle with, you know, we were old now. I've got a brother and sister. I was 19, just turning 20. My sister was 21. My brother was 22. So all born closely together. So we were just going through that moment of leaving home and spreading our wings, and then my mum suddenly found herself all on her own, and it was just really hard. So to see how far my mum's come in all that time without a lot of support and help has just been phenomenal, and that strength, I think I get that strength from my mum. And then I think the third influential person would have to be, it's not really a person, it's a type of person, it's a culture of people, and it would be the Sherpas out in the Himalayas. It would be the Tenzings, you know, who climbed with Hillary, and those people, because I've been to the Himalayas 3 times now and climbed with those people, and they're just the most resilient, happy, grateful, strong people. They go up and down mountains, putting themselves at risk to take people like me, who has climbing experience. A lot of people don't, but they do it for us. And they do it to earn a salary, but they do it with a passion that we probably don't all put into our jobs. So for me, it's those people. They're resilient. They influence my thinking a lot because they are just strong as.
It's interesting you say that about the passion people put into their jobs. You know, I think, you know, you've summarized it quite nicely. On the conversations I've generally had, and I know from personal opinion, making someone proud is a great motivator.
Yeah.
You know, remembering someone else's strength and combining that into your own, whether that be family or not, or, you know, work associates or even partners. You know, that's something that, and then that passion. Yeah, and I've known you for a few years now, and the passion for sales has definitely shined through in everything we do. You know,
Yeah.
everyone that I've spoken to that knows you as well says the same thing. So yeah, okay, that's interesting. We'll come back to a couple of points on there later. If you could have a coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose and why?
Do you know what? Oh, God, there could be a number of people, but I decided that I would choose Winston Churchill.
Okay, yep, that's definitely a figure.
It's definitely a figure. Do you know what? I think we all feel like we've got it so tough today, you know, but we're very blessed, and we have a lot of things that are good for us and that we can embrace and we can afford. And, you know, I know we're all in different parts of our life, in different financial parts of our life, but we have a lot to be grateful for. And I think back in the days with Winston Churchill and the wars and everything, I just think, you know, when you look at politics today versus politics then, you know, the stability, the ability to make decisions and stick to them. You know, he had bigger decisions to make than our politicians today, because he had to make decisions about soldiers and about soldiers' families and about war and about rationing. And, you know, and I just think it would be fascinating to sit down and to hear about his strength of mind when he was making decisions that people's lives literally did depend on it. And I think having a coffee with somebody like that and learning from somebody like that it would be so different to the type of people we learn from today. It would offer a different strength.
Yeah, definitely. That's an interesting point. I'm starting to see a theme with these questions with you. It's quite interesting. Resilience and that mental strength coming through, you know, is definitely a trend that's starting to. We haven't even done a dry run of this, so it's quite interesting.
We're just flying by the seat of our pants.
Literally. Welcome to the startup world.
Winging it.
Yeah, there's that trend of resilience and mental toughness I'm starting to see come through. So it'll be interesting to see when we get into the main part of our conversation, getting into that. Okay. I want to ask this question, the next couple of questions that we got down here in a joint one. Do you have a life motto? And also, what's your favourite quote?
Oh God, the motto, and I give it to everybody really, especially people who moan a lot. so my motto is change what you can change, and the rest will take care of itself. I like that because I think we forget sometimes in life that if we're fed up about something, you can change it.
Yeah, that's very true.
And if you don't change it, then you stay fed up. So why would you not change it? If you can change it and it's in your hands and capabilities to change it, be it a job or where you live or whatever, you should make the effort to change it, because there are many things in life you can't change. So let them be and don't worry about them. Go and worry about the things you can change, and if you're miserable, change it, for God's sake.
Yeah, I think I resonate a lot with that personally. You know, my always life motto is there's only 3 things you can control: your mindset, your actions, and your emotions. Everything else is a variable, and so there's a lot of synergy with that. And that's interesting. Okay. Bit of a quirky one, this last one before we jump into that. What's your guilty pleasure song?
Well, I mean, this is going public, right? So I've got to be really careful. No, it's not a song, it's a band. So my guilty pleasure music is Steps.
I want to say who they are, but I actually know who they are. I do.
Tragedy.
I do. Yeah, I'm not going to sing and I'm not going to do dance moves, but yeah, that song does come to mind.
Do you know what? I go down to Reading a lot with work, and when I'm driving back, especially if it's dark like it is at this time of year, and if the weather's a bit I was going to say, can we shit?
Yeah. You know me. We can say that. I'll just put an advisory on when it goes out.
Sweat, potty mouth. I just put the music on, put Steps on, and just sing all the way home. When I get home in it feels like 10 minutes. It's not, but it's like a concert for one in the car, and that's my guilty band. Steps. Yeah.
Bit of carpool karaoke.
Carpool. Get James Corden in, and we can sing along.
Yeah. I just want to say, for legal and HR purposes, this content in this podcast is not in any way affiliation or linked with James Corden's carpool karaoke or Apple.
No, all Steps. All bands are available.
Great. So, look, the title of this podcast is "Choosing to Be Childless," right? So, and I think this is a really interesting topic that we're discussing. Obviously, it's on the back of you writing a blog. I think was it last year or this year?
This year.
This year that I came across. Read it, fell in love with it, because we live in a world today where, you know, if you're a woman in sales, in tech sales, or women in leadership, or women in a professional role, there is a big push from organizations to have more inclusion. There is also comments made, in offices and things like that, by people who talk often about women having children, women entering the workforce. And there was a particular line in your blog, which, for the purposes, I will share the link with other people. It's where, you see adverts everywhere about super mums. I hear about working mums pretty much every day, but I know they do an amazing job. Trust me, I have an amazing mum, but because I'm not a mum does not make me any less of a hard worker or a superwoman, because it certainly makes me feel that way sometimes. And it's completely the other side of the fence that I haven't heard anyone talk about. And So I really want to delve into you, and part of this conversation, the main part of our conversation is how has that impacted your life? You know, from a choice perspective, from a career perspective, you know, and entertaining maybe how things would look if you did go down that route. Would you be as successful?
Mm.
Yeah, and just eye opening that. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, to start off, I think the obvious question is, why? Why did you choose to be childless?
So when I say choose to be childless, let's be clear from day one, I've never been maternal in that way. So I chose because I think there are women out there, and I know a couple actually, who never felt maternal, but they chose to have kids because they felt it was the right thing to do in their relationship. They felt it was the right thing to do in life. And even with their kids, although they wouldn't be without their kids, if they had their time again, they may choose not to have children. You know, as a 50-year-old woman growing up, you were kind of expected you'd have children at some point. And I actually do remember, and I can't remember what age I was, but I do remember saying to people, I think, I'd like to get married around 25 and then have a couple of kids before I'm 30. But it was kind of just saying it because it was expected of me. There was no desire or passion to go off and do that. And then I think when my dad died, when I was 19, I then went on a journey of, as I said before, trying to make my dad proud, trying to be the woman, the career woman that I'd always thought I was going to be. But I had this different agenda, which was doing it for my dad. So it didn't even occur to me for quite a few years about having children, because there was no way I was going to have them while I was on this career path. And then just as I've got older, I've either not been in a relationship with anybody that I've felt differently about having kids. I've never been with somebody and thought, right, now's the time I'm going to have a couple of kids. It's just never been part of my journey. And I always said, if I got pregnant by accident, I would have it, because that felt like destiny to me. And one thing you may or may not know, Luke, is I did get pregnant, but I didn't know I was pregnant, and I lost it. I had a miscarriage at home. It was a week before I went out on my second trip to the Himalayas. So had I known, and had I not had a miscarriage, I probably would have a kid now. But again, it wouldn't have been through a maternal instinct or choice.
Yeah.
It would have been because I'm quite spiritual and I believe in destiny.
Yep.
But even since then, and as a 50-year-old woman now who's perimenopausal, I don't ever regret not having kids. I don't have a regret. I don't have a what if. I am more than happy to talk to women. In fact, a couple of women reached out on the back of my blog to say, so pleased you've written this, because I don't think I want kids, but how do you know?
It's very interesting you say that, because there's actually a study that's been released.
Okay.
In the next 10 years, more and more women are now choosing to focus on their careers, and not have children. And they reckon in the next 10 years, 50% of women will not have a partner,
Right.
will not have kids.
Right.
So your choice is not alien
No.
in a set of, like, in terms of this is mad, but I think then at the same time it's interesting. You've obviously had a very mature head on your shoulders, because there are a lot of people that have had kids,
Yeah.
and yes, kids are lovely, and I don't have any personally, but I know from friends and from family that have kids, they're a blessing and everyone loves them, but
Yeah.
they also do put a little bit of a break on your life. It's
Right.
18 years commitment minimum, right? There's no
At
cool
least.
down period for those
Can't give
things.
them back. No.
No,
Can't
but
change your mind.
and depending on who you talk to, and I'm sure there will be comments either said publicly or not. Some people see kids as huge motivation,
Yeah.
and some people don't. So I didn't know you was pregnant, and I'm sorry
Thank you.
that you've lost that. Funnily enough, actually, the charity that we supported, Tommy's charity, Walking Up, is about miscarriages, because of my
Okay.
own personal situation and things like
Right.
that.
Right.
But no, that's interesting. So, while when you was going on this career journey as
Mhm.
such, I want to do this. I want to make my dad proud. Did it never occur to you during that time at all that you thought, do you know what, Mary, was your friends around you doing this? The people you associated with, were they all getting married? It's like when you hit 25 or 30 nowadays. I'm close to 30. It's like, people, my friends are getting married, engaged, or having kids. That's that common line. What about you when you were on your mission to make your dad proud and be in that career woman? What was going on around you?
So in my early 20s, I was lucky that I had a lot of friends that were all similar to me. We all just wanted to party. We were going to Ayia Napa and Ibiza and just having fun. It was probably late 20s into 30s that people started to really settle down and have kids. And it didn't, the kid thing just didn't bother me, because I can see it from the outside looking in. I'm not emotionally attached because I don't have kids. So therefore I can see other people's relationships with children involved. And I'm a very observational person. And I'd observe these relationships and partnerships, and I say this to my husband today, because we got married 5 years ago. He's got two boys, and kids was never going to happen for us because we were probably too old, and again didn't want them. But I say to them, when you look at people who get to our age, you see that in some marriages the kids have taken over the mum's attention completely, and the mum's given everything to the kids, and the dad's probably feeling a little bit left out. And then you look at other relationships where they were just so young having kids that by the time they reach the 40s, they're both on different paths, they're both on different journeys. And some people have a lot of problems, relating to their children. I've got friends with, poorly children, and that's so time consuming. And I know I've probably got really selfish over the years because I don't have to worry about kids, but I just find that being able to look into other people's lives with them, in some instances without children, it just kind of kept coaching me in the direction of go with the career, go with the career, go with the children. So, so it was a learning curve every day, every month, every year. But I felt like I kept learning how I really didn't want kids.
And that's a very interesting in point. You've been very, and we're going to come back to this resilience of mind that you've spoken about, and also the those group of people that take you up from in the Himalayas, that passion and everything like that. But I'm going to ask, was you ever judged?
So there have been comments over the years, as people do, where they go, are you going to have children, and why not? Is there something wrong? Because obviously that's the first view, isn't it? There must be something wrong.
Yeah. Not is it a choice? It's what's wrong?
What's wrong with you?
Yeah. Mad, that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose you could call that judgment. Those that know me know that I wouldn't make that decision lightly. They know that decision for me has been the right decision for me. They'd probably be more surprised if they suddenly saw me with a pregnancy or a kid. They'd be like, what's going on? Where's Linda? I think I feel judged in and what you said before about my blog. I feel judged when you hear women saying, oh, you don't know what hard work is until you've had a kid. Now, don't get me wrong, I get that kids are hard work. That's why I don't have one. However, I work hard in other ways, and how hard you work is very relative to your life. If I was to take a child for a week, and compare and give the child's mum my life for a week, they might find my life just as hard, but in different ways. So it's not that they work harder than me, it's we all work harder in different ways. And I think, when you do see the magazines with lots of comments about mums, it does make me feel judged for not being a mum, because there's not the same embracement. Is that a word? Embracement? Embrace?
Yeah, embracement.
Embracing
we'll claim it as a word here first on the Honest
Conversation
podcast.
but there isn't the same pedestal for women who choose not to have kids, and that might contribute to why women are scared of saying I don't want to have kids, because women are scared of saying that, because again they feel like they're being judged, or they're inadequate, or they're not following the process, but the process changes, right?
It does, and I think society changes as well. And it's interesting you say that, because yes, you know what, the kid, they do say that, and I know people. I think then take it to the next level and they enter back into the world of work, and suddenly, you're not only, so not are you just Linda, who's an average person living her average life, happy in herself, doing what thing. Your colleague comes back from maternity leave,
Yeah.
and she's just had a second kid, and all amazing, all doing that, and she's working. And have you found that there has been in the workplace judgments made, not on you per se, but you're both doing similar roles? It could be that has there been? Do you feel judged because they're a working single mum and you're just a working person who's contributing to society in her own way?
Well, I think it's more, you probably don't get the same leniency, because if you're a working mom, people know that you're shattered all the time, and you might have to go pick the kids up from school, and one of the kids might be sick, so you might have to take the afternoon off. Whereas for me, I'm not a working mum. I'm a worker, but I'm not a working mum. Therefore, I have no excuse to do anything different to what the men are doing. And by the way, dads don't call themselves working dads.
No,
They're
they
just
don't actually.
they're just
Men.
working.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
just
No,
working.
that's a very interesting point.
So
That's
why it's a bit about, when you look at equality, discrimination, if we're not to identify people by colour, race, religion, whatever, why are we identifying as working mums and not working mums? Do you know what I mean? And why do we not call dads working dads? And is there a necessity? Is there a necessity in this day and age, if you're a mum, to be called a working mum, if you are indeed working? Surely you're just a mum that works.
I think that's that's a whole other podcast and conversation. I'm
That's a
sure we
deep
can.
one, isn't it? Yeah.
That is a deep one, but it is a very interesting point. Where especially in software sales, it is all about hitting your targets. Especially now in the economic climate. Deals are getting slower.
Yeah.
Everything around that. So there is more time demanded from the individuals.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in organizations where where I've gone and consulted, and I've seen it where there is more leniency. And then now you've got dads having more paternity leave for things like that, and you've got dads putting on their LinkedIn profiles father of two.
Yeah.
Like, just as if, I mean, is that because they feel they need to say that on there, does that resonate more? Yes, proud, everyone's proud of their children.
Proud of it.
Or,
Be proud of it. But do you
be
need to
proud
be
of it.
known by it? Is it
That's
discriminatory to the people that don't have kids, women and men, if we're all treated differently? I mean, surely if we're in the workplace, we should all be treated the same, because there shouldn't be lines drawn because of a weakness or a strength, or a positive or a negative. We should have compassionate employers who take us all case by case, and if we've got a situation going on, they deal with it. But I don't think we should be put into buckets of mums and dads and not mums and dads.
No, that's good, and I think that leads quite nicely on to sort of my next question, really, for you. Partly what you wrote in your blog and from our conversations, you've sort of, I get this feeling that society has, or the world has sort of tried to push you in a certain direction.
Mm.
That can't be an easy thing if that's a daily constant reminder from what we see visually around us, whether that be magazines, adverts. LinkedIn has become an amazing platform as it is. It has become a platform to share about children. I think I saw a post the other day with a mum with a newborn baby.
Right.
The caption was, "I'm sorry for anybody." I think it was, "I'm sorry for anything that the concept basically was, I'm sorry for anything I've ever said about being a mum and it not being too hard.
Right.
You know, so it's celebrating that. But
Yeah.
I've never seen for once anybody who has celebrated a mum, or sorry, to tell a lie, a woman who's not a mum, who's just
Yeah.
career driven, who
Yes.
wants to just retire to the lakes and go walking mountains in her,
Yeah.
you know, rather than be a grandma and a mum.
Yeah.
How does that affect your mental health and you know, from that constant barrage of that? This is what society says we should have.
It's an interesting one, because again, I've said this to my husband and family and friends over and over. I think when I look at my life, and this isn't judgment of anybody else, by the way, it's kind of the government, the country has a stereotypical, if you were to do everything, this is probably old fashioned actually, if you were to do everything right, these are the steps you would take. So you'd be you know, young guy, young woman, whatever, you'd eventually meet somebody, settle down, have kids, buy a nice house, picket fence, blah 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 blah. And I've sort of, you know, back in the day, obviously pregnancy before marriage or pregnancy outside of a relationship used to be frowned upon. Me growing up, there was a lot of it happening around me. You know, I remember at one point they said that young girls were getting pregnant just so they could have a council house and get away from their mums and dads and live on their own. And it was like, that's crazy. That's quite a crazy thing to do just for a house.
You'd be surprised.
But yes, exactly.
I've heard similar stories 20 years later.
Honestly, I think it still probably goes on. But for me, I felt like I grew up in all the right prescriptive ways.
Yeah.
I didn't get pregnant outside of a relationship or a marriage. I got a job. I've never really been out of work. If I've been made redundant or restructured, I've always got a job straight away. So I've always done the right things work-wise. I've been ambitious. I've aimed for different goals and got there. I've, you know, got married eventually. I've never been given money by the government for having children. I've always done everything the old-fashioned prescriptive way, but I don't get rewarded for that. And I'm not saying I want money, but it kind of feels like you get forgotten about a little bit because you actually didn't do things the way that other people are doing it, which does get them into magazines as mums, or, you know, you into the dole office or whatever. I've done everything so the right way, but I won't get the same kudos as a mum for doing things their way, which is not right or wrong. It's just the way it is.
Interesting. And how, you know, let's talk about your career and how your decision has impacted that. From your perspective, have you found that it's been a plus for your career not having children? Or would you say, you know, or even when, you know, the lady comes back from maternity leave, do you feel where there is more leniency? How does that affect you as a person, you know, from a career perspective?
I'm the sort of person at work where I try and ignore the noise, because noise is interference, and interference means you're distracted from getting your job done. And you know what it's like in sales, Luke. You've just got to get stuff done. So I try to ignore too much noise. And I'm a different person now to what I was, you know, 25 years ago. Back in the day, it would have driven me crazy. There would have been debates, passionate arguments, and I wouldn't let it lie. I would be very frustrated with it. These days, I don't really care. You know, you go do what you want, I'll go do what I want. If I see something imbalanced, I will make a decision whether that's a battle I want to fight today or not, because, you know, I would have fought it 25 years ago, but with age comes wisdom, right? And I don't judge people. I don't have a problem with people who get something over me, unless it's really, really unjust, and then I will take it up with the people that have made that decision. I don't think there is a need for discrimination in any form in the workplace or outside of the workplace. So if I see it, I would always call it out, whether it's affecting me or not. But you know, I'm a different person now. I think things are unfair sometimes for people, but, you know, are these battles you can fix, and are these battles you can fix overnight? probably not. I think it's helped my career not having kids, because I've never had to stop and think about anybody else. I've just been able to be selfish.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. And I don't regret it. I think the harder problem is being a woman in technology. Because I did have at one point a sales director who took me into an office and asked me, was I thinking about having kids, and could I explain why, so that he could prepare for that. Now, we all know you can't ask those questions of a woman.
No. And I know of organisations where, they won't hire a woman
Right.
because she might be pregnant. She thinks she might be pregnant, and even though she could still work for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, even,
Still goes on.
it still goes off even to this day. And you actually bridging quite nicely into the second part of this main thing what I wanted to talk to you about, which was obviously choosing to be childless, but you're still a woman in tech.
Yeah.
And there has been I say insidious, that's the wrong word, an exhaustive amount of energy, money, advertisements put in for women in tech.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a bit over the top, or do you think, you know what, let's just crack on, do what we do, our achievements will be noticed by the right people? What's your opinion on the last sort of 5 years in women in tech, on women in SaaS or women in sales, on that bubble that has been considering getting bigger and bigger?
Well, I can say this much. In the last 25 years, there are a few more women in sales than there used to be. I don't think it's increased that much. But let's be real. Most women don't understand tech. We're not bothered about tech. We like shoes and handbags, and I don't mean that derogatory. I like shoes and handbags. I do. I love them. What women don't realize is this kind of job can really buy some nice shoes and handbags, right? So this role or this industry is not portrayed properly to women, and therefore women don't see why they would go and work in tech. And I've been quite clear about this for a long time. There's been studies back in the day that more women come out of university with higher degrees than guys. So we've got the intelligence, right? But when you're faced with so much reality TV, the Kardashians, being a wife of a footballer, glitz, glam, and money, we're not telling young women that actually you can get that glitz, glamour, and money coming into the tech industry. And we're not showing them how interesting that could be. So I don't think much has changed. I don't think it'll change until we represent tech to women in a more relational way. Relatable way. It's still a boys' club in tech. Very much a boys' club. Yeah. Not in every company. My company who I work for now, Pega, is brilliant. There's a good mix of women and men. There's still more men, but there's a good mix. But what I've seen over 25 years is lots of boys' clubs and cliques, and it's some people just still don't know how to treat women in their teams. It's great that more men.
No, sorry, no. All I was going to say is, do you think men know how to manage and coach women? That's been a personal, since owning a business and being in leadership, I have to say the biggest. I've had many challenges. How do you? We all know, take them out for a coffee. Like, you get told by things by the other men in there, but actually coaching a woman is very different to coaching a man. Treating the same, but do you think there's a skills gap there, maybe an education piece around leadership, which may be why there isn't enough women in sales, because the leadership, whether they're men or women, don't know how to lead women if they're a man, for example?
I think there's a huge leadership gap anyway. I've seen men treated badly by their managers as well. Some people who are managers should not be managers. They shouldn't. Some of them are bullies. Some of them are trying to be buddies when they're supposed to be managers. Some of them just don't have the first clue about people skills and handling people. And we are different as women, and we have a lot of positives as saleswomen. My old sales director from years ago used to say, what I love about you, Linda, is you're so nosy. as a woman, you knows it. And he didn't mean that derogatory. He meant that I asked lots of questions when I was in a customer meeting. I asked more questions than the guys, because guys are very black and white, whereas we read between the lines. Not, we make your lives hell when we read between the lines sometimes, but in a customer meeting, it's all good discovery. So I think women are different. A lot of bosses I've met have said that they're really happy to have women in the team because it softens the testosterone sort of feeling of a team. But a lot of blokes don't know how to manage women. A lot of women don't know how to manage women, and we bring a lot to the party, but we are quickly turned off if somebody bullies us or doesn't listen to us. And I think that's why you have a lot of women not willing to go to the boardroom. As you say, there's been a lot of money about getting women to the boardroom, keeping women in tech and advancing them. We're quite stubborn. If we've seen some rubbish that we don't want to put up with, you couldn't make us go into that boardroom, because we just don't care anymore. We'll literally sort of wash our hands of it and leave and go do something else. So, but I think blokes will put up with more crap to get to the boardroom, whereas we're like, don't need the boardroom. I'm comfortable doing what I'm doing. Thank you.
Do you find it's interesting you say that, again, because where there is so much money being pumped in, women in tech awards, there's this whole thing of that, when it's the same job, male or female, everyone's different, everyone's made different, and there is a gap in also the management piece and the leadership piece. Do you find you get approached more by recruiters or internal talent teams because you're a woman, because a company wants a woman in their team, or from a recruitment perspective?
Yes. Definitely been approached more from a recruitment perspective because I'm a woman. Oh, this company wants more women in their team. This company's trying to be more diverse, which is,
how does that make you feel?
well, it's kind of the right thing to do, but it just makes you feel like you're a means to an end, or you're ticking a box. It's not very attractive. It doesn't make me go, oh, I really want to go and work there. Listen, at the end of the day, every employer should pick the right person for the job, regardless of sex, colour, culture, religion, everything we've mentioned before. You don't pick somebody because they're a woman. The RAF were pulled up on it recently, weren't they, for picking people they needed because of diversity rather than picking
ethnic
the right people for the
minority.
job.
Yeah,
And it's the
absolutely.
wrong thing to do. And if men are the right solution for tech, that's absolutely fine, as long as you're choosing the right man for the right job and not just men because it's a boys' club. Do you know what I mean? You've got to put the right people in the right job. There are definitely pluses to having women in the team. There's that saying, isn't there? It's not the best saying. Pale, male, and stale. Customers.
I haven't heard that one.
Have you not heard that?
No.
So I've been told it a few times that it's customers, especially in tech, get sick of seeing the same typical people, which is pale, male, and stale. So they get sick of seeing that. So actually, when you have a woman reach out to you for a meeting or for an introduction session or an exhibition, they say hi, there's a good chance they might actually take some time with you because you're different to what they're used to seeing, which is a salesman. So there are definitely advantages to having women on the team, and definitely advantages to being a woman in what is a really difficult industry to be in.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. And I know there are clients, old and new, that have said to me, "We actually want a woman in this role." I'm very lucky to have built up a pretty good, a very good network of women in sales. Growth next year will be supporting a number of women in sales awards. Being a diverse recruiter is actually a big plus for us, and we are really, really, I think it's the best thing. My one of my best bosses in recruitment was a female, and she was brilliant. Crazy as crackers, but absolutely brilliant, and loved her. And I learned more from her than I did from 7 male leaders. and so for me, you need that balance, right? And
Yeah.
but also I do think like you said, there's a lot of gas being blown about women in sales, women this, but it's not hitting the right nails on the head. It's not giving that why you should be in there. Yes, it will hit a diversity quota. Yes, it will do this, but why should someone who's got when they are being filtered with Love Island this and Kim Kardashian and being a wag or a footballer's wife or for our American friends soccer,
Yeah.
when they can go and do something else, when actually they can earn six-figure salaries in 2 or 3 years, even more,
Yeah.
in a sales role, and yes, people will listen more to them.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, women are actually better at sales than men.
But again, I think that comes down to the woman.
But I think that's a skill set, because women are sales. The best way in sales, I'm sure you agree with this, if you can get an emotional reaction from someone, grab onto emotions, and women are, there's a reason why in certain industries, take care or nursing, there's more women in them than there are men, right?
Yeah.
So the disparity is there in certain things.
Yeah.
And one of the things is because women are much more caring. They're much more, their personality makeup, DNA, whatever you want to talk about. It's it's geared more towards that way. So when you are engaging with someone and you want to get that emotional connection with them, a woman can do that a lot easier than pale, stale, and what was the other one?
Pale, male,
Pale,
and stale.
Pale, male, and stale. That's those three words immediately make me think of gone off bread. That's like, who wants to gone off bread? I am hungry, so it's been a long while since I had breakfast.
Yeah, same. But you're right. I think we've got to recruit better. We've got to explain tech. If you did a survey tomorrow to women of a certain age and said, what would working in a tech world mean to you? They'd probably imagine these nerdy engineers who are sat there writing code, and that's what they'd think they do not want to do. Whereas if you look at me as a woman, I wear not so much now since before COVID, because COVID's changed how we work and how we dress, but I used to wear the most beautiful dresses and high heels to work, and I drive a nice car, and I've got nice handbags, and I'm glam. And I like that because I've earned it and it's all mine, and there's nobody to say they did it for me. But I don't think women see that. It's a bit like when I was saying I grew up and I thought, well, music is either probably teaching it or singing it, and I wasn't good enough to be in a pop group, so I didn't want to teach it, so that was it. It's the lack of awareness we have about what working in this world could mean for you as a woman, and I think we have to do that better. But we still always in tech, in every industry, we always must put the right person forward for the job. You can't just put women in just because you need more women. You can't just put men in because you need more men. It has to be, is this the right person for this job? Yes, and that's it. The rest doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And I think that, again, it's the education piece that comes down, educating everybody.
Yeah.
Whether it's hiring someone, whether you want to attract more women into your business, wherever it is, education is the key.
We all stereotype, right? We all put things into nice little packages, but are those packages right anymore? Probably not.
Yeah. I think that's a very fair point. Okay, so last sort of section of the podcast. Again, thank you so much for coming on board. It's been absolutely amazing.
Welcome. Fascinating.
It's been an amazing conversation. I want to say a lot better than I thought it was, but I was more nervous about my end than anything else. I know you can talk really well and you're very articulate. So I'm just, no, perfect. That's good for me. That's good for me. Less talking I do, the better. But no, I think that's good. But just coming back around to you, I want to delve into your career, because you are a woman in sales. Calling a kettle kettle. What's been the biggest difficulty in your current role or in your role as a sales professional that isn't being talked about?
Oh gosh, the biggest thing that's not being talked about. I thought about this, and it's a tough one. I think the the technology industry is hard. You know, it's been 25 years of highs and lots of lows, because the tech industry is very flippant. It wants results quick. It can black mark you without any real reason other than your face doesn't fit from one day to the next. And I think, you know, people do get treated badly in this world. You know, I remember working at one company, and I just joined, and there was a guy in there who was hitting his number every year, but the company had wanted to change the way they were viewed. They wanted younger, stylish people coming in. So they'd recruited a few. They recruited me. I think I was younger. I don't know how stylish I was at the time, but
You were
they'd
glam.
they'd recruited a few of us, and he was older, probably not so glam, and they got rid of him. And that shocked me to the core, because he was doing his number. And if I'm a business person, I don't care what so-and-so is wearing. I don't care what their age is. I care about the money they're bringing in, the bottom line. And I remember just thinking how cutthroat that was. And then over my career, I've seen people been let go because, you know, there's this thing in European law now where you can get rid of people less than 2 years if you want to, if you need to. So as companies have been resizing, restructuring, or they just don't like you for whatever reason, they just cut you loose without any reason. And, you know, I've seen that happen a lot of times. It's happened to me once or twice. You think you're gaining friends in those companies, and then all of a sudden you're just thrown to the wayside. And I think it can be a really vicious, cutthroat world. And I think companies need to think about the damage and the consequences of what they're doing when they do that kind of thing to people. You know, it's not just about a business. Yes, you want to do well as a business, but those people are everything that are working for you. They're giving up a lot to work for you, and to be so callous, just dropping people under a couple of years for no good reason other than bottom line, is just, it's harrowing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. You know, especially now you see it. There was the big one recently was Data Robot, I think it was,
Yeah.
or one of the very big fans saying, if it's not Data Robot, I do apologize for anyone listening to this. But I think it was one of those big organizations where, you know, they were made a lot of redundancies, but actually turned out a year ago they'd sold, the C-suite had sold a bunch of shares. Or the founder had sold a bunch of shares, and there's a massive investigation going on, which, you know, obviously, you know, we're waiting to hear the results on. But okay, yeah. So being a cutthroat and the damage, the ripple effect, essence of decisions from organizations.
Yeah.
It's just on the back end of that, if they recruited the right people and they weren't so focused on just hiring bunches and bunches of people for growth, do you think that would solve that issue, that cutthroatness in a bit more of a way? Because then you're looking for the right talent versus just anyone that can potentially hit a number.
Well, I think it's who's running your companies at the end of the day, isn't it? We've all, in sales, we all know that we can have a really crappy year, not hit your number, and then the company next year puts your number up. And you go, well, hang on a minute, how did you get to that number when I didn't hit my number last year? I'm building a business here. And they go, well, they did some sums, and it's almost like a finger in the air. And you think, but that doesn't make sense. So you see things like that happening where you go, who's running this company where they're living on hope? They're planning on hope. You know, startups have say they have a great starting point. So they hire a ton of people.
Yeah.
Not based on any fact. They've just based it on the fact they've had a flourish of activity. And then 6 months, 12 months later, they realised they reacted too quickly. So now they're going to get rid of all of those people, probably within the 2-year mark. And therefore, you know, they've got rid of people, probably ruined their lives to some extent. And, you know, why? Because they were careless. They didn't plan their business based on fact. They built it on hope. And we know as salespeople, you can't win on hope.
Absolutely not. No. So on that then, about leadership, what's the best bit of advice any mentor or leader has given you in the industry?
it's probably been the resilience thing, you know, about being prepared for rejection, don't take things personally. I always say to people, you're not really making friends at work, because most people you work with are not friends. They're people you work with. You might take a one or two with you when you go, but don't get too invested in that personal life with those people, because it's not real life, it's work life. And it's just have that resilience to take the crap that comes, because the crap will come in tech, in sales. It will, whether you're a guy or a girl, it will. You see the odd person who seems to float through their career just earning money and being the good guy, but most people in tech will go through a lot of crap, and it's just having the resilience to not take it personally and just keep moving on and keep moving on. Because I can guarantee you, with every change you make, there's a better story waiting for you.
How for people listening, and for myself, because I love a bit of personal development. Is there anything you do or you've done to help prepare your mind for that resilience, or to cultivate that resilience?
I suppose it's expecting unexpected. I don't take anything for granted at work now. You know, if I'm really enjoying a time at work, I keep making sure I take a step back and think about everything from a more reality perspective, because again, this isn't a playground, it's not somewhere I'm meeting my friends, it's a really serious place to be, and people expect things from you, and if you're not giving them what they're paying you for, then it can be a hard exit. So I think I just constantly make sure I'm doing the right thing, challenge myself, ask me those serious questions. You know, Linda, if you were to lose your job tomorrow, what would that mean? Are you prepared for that? Do you have some money stashed? Do you have your mortgage paid? What's going on? And just always being one eye, sort of looking on the outside, just in case things go left.
I think that's a really interesting point, because a lot of people, especially in the last couple of years in the SaaS space, you know, maybe in the last 3 months, but you know, it's been such a boom time.
Yeah.
You know, people. There's builders outside, so I apologise. Hopefully you can't hear it. That's good then. Noise noise reduction headphones.
The kit works.
Yes, go for technology. Yeah, this is sponsored by Jabra. I wish. Jabra, if you want to get in touch, more than happy to. No, but on that note, I think, you know, people don't have that forward-thinking mindset. You know, you do need reality check sometimes, you know, where it has been so great. You've done 140% number, 200% number, President's Club, and it's like, oh, actually, it's a bit harder now.
It can disappear in a heartbeat, right?
It can come and go quick as like that. So I love that, because and to be fair, that's something that I do as well. I think you have to. What's the worst case scenario? Play it out, run through with it, and you know, and then you've got nothing to be afraid, and you have that resilience because you're not panicking.
But also, if you're unhappy, and you've got that protective bubble, you can make the change.
Yes.
Because a lot of people won't make the change because they're scared that it might take too long, and therefore they won't have any money to pay the bills or whatever. If you prepare for that day of unhappiness and the day you decide you want to walk, you can do it.
Absolutely. What would you say is one must-have bit of sales tech that you can't live without?
I mean, it's obvious, but it's a mobile phone, isn't it?
Wow. Do you know, if you speak to people nowadays, it'd be Gong, Sales Loft, Zoom Info.
Oh, you mean like an app?
Outreach. No, but I think you hit them over the head. Phone.
If it's because your phone's everything, isn't it? You know,
well, if you look on LinkedIn now, email marketing. I actually posted this morning on LinkedIn to the recruitment world, like, you know, you need to start picking up the phone. You need to start dialing now.
So that's an interesting fact, because my colleague was telling me on Wednesday night that he because we're mostly hunters in my team, and he picked up the phone the other day and rang 5 senior people at 8:30 in the morning, and he got hold of 4 of them, and he's got follow up with all 4. So when we started out back in the day, when I started out back in the day, it was all about telephones because we didn't have mobile phones and stuff then, whereas now there's all different ways you can hunt, but phoning, calling's back in.
Absolutely.
The trend has come
Absolutely.
back.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing with all the tech in the world. Thing that was created in the 80s, 90s is a thing that pretty much people's OTEs and bonuses and commissions, that glam lifestyle, that whatever it is, the nice guy relies on picking up the phone.
Yeah.
So that's good.
All goes full circle, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I can definitely agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
What is something I should have asked you, but that I didn't get to, that would give me the biggest insight into you and who you are?
Oh gosh, what should you have asked me? I suppose after 25 years, here's a question. If you had your time again, would you do sales?
Well, Linda, 25 years in the industry. If you had your time again, would you do sales?
Interesting question, Luke. I think knowing what I know now about music, I would have kept my music going and done something in the music industry. So probably not sales. I would recommend sales. So I do it. I think of it differently, right? So I gave my oldest stepson this bit of advice when he was 15, and I think he's taken it actually. There are 2 things to consider if you're a young person starting out in a career. Do you want to do something you love that gets you out of bed every day, but probably doesn't give you a lot of money, but at least you love your job? Or do you want to do something that you maybe don't love the same and you want to force yourself into, but it pays really well? That's the first decision you have to make, because sales is a love-hate job, right? When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's god awful. So, but it pays really well.
There's a saying in the recruitment industry: champagne and razor blades.
Like that.
Just for legal purposes, we don't literally mean figurative razor blades.
No.
But it's the highs and the lows, right? It's
the hardest job in the world in that respect. You've got to, and again goes back to the resilience. You've got to have some resilience to know that those bad times are coming.
Yeah.
But you put in the work, you get the reward, and the good times around the corner. And if I'd have known now what I know about music, I would have followed my heart and gone into music. And I don't know how much it would have earned me, because it depends what I would have been doing. But if I wanted to follow the money, I would follow sales every single time. But you've got to have, the strength of an ox.
Absolutely. And the last question, I think you might have even just said it there and then, but for anyone listening to this, and I hope people are, but if anyone listening to this, in the hour, the hour that we've done this, what if there was the biggest, if they could just take one thing away from this that will benefit themselves in their lives or whatever, what is the biggest takeaway you want people to take from this conversation?
I think, oh gosh, to just go for it. It's a tough world out there. I can't speak about other jobs because I've not really been in other jobs since coming into this, but this is tough. Sales is tough. It's tougher as a woman. So, once you've put your stake in the ground, just go for it. Speak up in meetings, put your hand up at conferences, be confident but not arrogant. Just, enjoy it, be yourself, and just go for it, because it can be so rewarding. But you've got to try, right? You've got to at least try. And I think if you're coming into this world, be prepared for the rocky road, but just go for it. Just try and enjoy it and live your best life doing sales. It's not bad.
And you know what? On that note, I can't think of a better way to end first podcast on the Honest Conversation. Thank you so much for your honesty, your insights, and I'm sure people will be searching you after this.